I wanted to talk about one of the things that I took away from my psychedelic therapy was the importance and the impact that relationships have. But I want to really zero in on the relationship between fathers and their children, or just fathers and their son, because every son has gripes with their dad and the way that they went about doing things. That you told me to do this, but you didn't do this, and your ego gets the better of you, and you can fall out of relationship with your dad, and you can have a tough adult life just due to the nature of the relationship of father and son. But there's something there that, like, the fact that it's like inevitable to have disagreements and like issues with your dad comes from the fact that you loved him. Like, that the love that you had for him started early. And, speaking from my own experience, my dad taught me how to love myself and how to be loved, and that I was worth being loved. Obviously my mother did too, but I'm a man, right? So there's this cycle of father to son that we inevitably enter into when we're born. And the thing that, in my 20s, my dad and I were going through a rough period, but as I'm gotten older in my 30s, I realized, and I've wised up, and through humility been able to recognize that he is improving on what he had from his dad. And my job is to improve on what he gave me, warts and all. And because of my pride as a younger man, I focused on the imperfections as if they shouldn't have been there. But now, because of the grace and the forgiveness that I was able to give him and myself through my therapy, my psychedelic therapy, I've created a different relationship around those imperfections, and I see them as gifts, because I wouldn't want to improve on, my dad's imperfections if I didn't love him in the beginning. If I didn't love him first, and if I didn't see that those imperfections were not what he was teaching me to not be like, right? And so, as a son, you're like, well, hey, you've been the authority for so long and you've told me what to do. And now I see that you're not perfect, but you were expecting perfection from me. And so that creates a lot of tension. So switching your mindset, or switching my mindset from that, immature, selfish, arrogant perspective to thank you for showing me your imperfections. They're a gift to me to improve on, because my son's going to do the same thing to me when he gets to know me as an adult. He's going to see, oh, Dad's not perfect. He's been this authority figure my whole life, and he's not perfect. And he's going to have a choice, just like I had a choice. And he's going to react a certain way. And one of my goals now is to make sure that I raise him in a way that he can forgive me. Because the sooner he can forgive me and the more genuine that forgiveness is, the better he'll be able to forgive himself and not, get stuck and be able to push past, the anger and the letdown of my imperfections. And we're all on that journey. We all chose at a certain point, unconsciously sometimes, on how we were going to react to that revelation of our father's imperfections. And, in psychedelic therapy, you go back to those moments and you really have to face them. At least I did. And it was a blessing to me, because I reconnected with my dad's heart and not necessarily his actions all the time. I knew where his heart was, and my love for him allowed me to look past his flaws and the moments where, those flaws showed up. I was able to see him as a kid, and it's so crazy that like that's such a impactful thing within psychedelic therapy is when you reconnect with the child version of you, like when you were a kid, you reconnect with that, with the heart that you had as a kid and that spirit of adventure and just, it's a fascinating thing to re-experience. And then you realize he was a kid too. Wow. And it's almost like impossible to really get there until you experience it for yourself. At least that's my experience. I felt that in my life or in my journey. I reconnected with that. And then from there was able to see that in everyone else. Now, I'm not perfect and all the time able to see past people's bullshit and their attitudes and stuff like that and be like, oh, you're just a kid that cut me off in the street today and is yelling at me, expecting me to give you the right of way when you don't have the right of way and you're flipping me off and you almost caused a wreck. You're just a child. Look, that literally happened today. I was FaceTiming my sister and I was like, get the out of the way, back up. I'm not perfect. But that is part of the experience, at least for me. You reconnect with being a kid and you're able to see that in others. Not all the time, but it becomes a truth, at least for me. And so the more that I pray, the more that I meditate, the more I spend quiet time alone with God, I can do that better when I am in connection with other people. So, anyways, kind of rambling there, but yeah, we're caught in this cycle of father, son, father, son, father, son, and we get to choose. It's up to us. We do make a decision. And like I was saying, there's moments in your journey and that you reconnect with those moments where you made that decision to react a certain way, to take it personally, to get upset and hold that grudge against someone or even against yourself for how someone treated you. And you, once you come back face to face with it, you have a choice after your journey to accept that it's part of the path forward that you have to work on and acknowledge, or you choose not to, but it's all up to you. What's something else I wanted to say here? I wrote this down. I said, my goal is to be able to teach my son through humility, love, and grace that my imperfections are part of the gifts I'm giving him. Because if I succeed at loving you properly, you will love me enough to give me grace. And in so doing, be able to give yourself grace. Right? That kind of encapsulates the idea I'm trying to get across. And in this cycle of giving grace to one another, confessing our sins one to another, that can happen. It's just very hard for fathers and sons to do that. But it's such a blessing to give your son, is to be able to confess to him and allow him to confess to you. It's a beautiful thing. And it's what Christ taught. And all of this grace comes from God, right? The reason I connected with it so much is because my relationship with God through Christ. And that grace is what informs my definition of grace, my relationship with grace. And if you don't have that, it seems you're looking for it, to me. I mean, I did psychedelic therapy and I came out more desiring deeper connection with Christ, deeper connection with our Heavenly Father. So, I mean, for people to be against psychedelic therapy as Christians, I think they don't understand that, it really does come down to what you go in with it, what you go into the journeys with. Look, let's be honest, a lot of Christians really don't know what they believe. It's just your culture, it's how you were raised. You haven't done your own deep thinking on it. That's okay. I'm not dismissing you. I'm just saying that is commonly the case, and very commonly the case with every Christian who has done psychedelics when they were younger and now dismiss it as they're older. They barely knew what they believed. Their relationship with God was so shallow, and they were doing psychedelic drugs out of arrogance and rebellion. So that rebellious spirit, that's one of the things they say in psychedelic therapy is like set and setting is so important. If you're coming to this with a rebellious spirit, and no other spirit but that when you're in your teenage years or college years, how can you have a good experience, and how can you work through anything? I mean, look, you're doing it recreationally. You're not doing it with a blindfold on, a therapist there sitting talking to you. So, of course, I agree. Doing what you did, don't do it. I agree. You're right, buddy. But doing what I did and what so many other people have done to enhance their lives, super beneficial. But the relationship between father and son, so valuable. And I came up with this, this thought. My buddy was talking to me on the phone, and we were just talking about that. And he said, he said something like, he sees his impact with his son as something that's going to echo through eternity, or like echo through, I think he said echo through eternity or something like that. And it's like, it's very true, because you're giving, you literally as a father, you're giving your heart to your kids. And the reason I know that is because when I come into contact with men who their heart is underdeveloped, super underdeveloped, I just ask them about their relationship with their dad. And that explains everything. So, as sad as it is, it's true. I don't want it to be that way. I'm just stating what I always see. it's just, you give your heart. And the great calling for a man is when he has a son, be able to give that and be able to have a heart that is developed enough that will, provide everything that their son needs or daughter, So those are just my thoughts on that.